Okay, everyone, you're very welcome to our third Gigi Academy webinar. We're absolutely delighted. We've got such great feedback from the previous two. So we did female focused nutrition for webinar number 1, and then we did a menstrual cycle 101. So that was like really deep diving into the menstrual cycle and kind of helping to really understand it that little bit more. We have saved both of those down. They're on our YouTube channel. If you would like to go back and have a little look at those or watch them back, they're there for you. And that's really the whole purpose of the Gigi Academy, is to really like give Lisa and I an opportunity to share all of the knowledge that we have on the whole female health space, and really just kind of demystify some of the things that are in out there on female health, because it is such a noisy space and it's really hard to decipher what is actually concrete science and what is probably not the best advice. And that's something Lisa and I really pride ourselves with, Gigi, is that everything is really research based. We use the latest clinical nutrition research and female health research to inform all of our content and to inform our Gigi blend. We obviously consulted a lot of the research, so we do hope you get some valuable insights out of it. And like I said, there'll be time for questions at the end and we're more than happy to answer them. So I will jump into our PCOS webinar. And PCOS in particular is an area that is super overwhelming online, and when you get a diagnosis, or if you're in the process of getting a diagnosis, if you just think you might have PCOS, it can be really overwhelming. There's a lot of conflicting advice online. So we just want to give you the information and kind of try and demystify some of the areas of PCOS, because it doesn't have to be this all-consuming condition and highly restrictive diets and everything else that you might read online. But yeah, just to re-impart that piece of kind of empowerment to you tonight. For anyone who isn't familiar with myself and Lisa, we're the founders of Gigi. We're both nutritional therapists, so we're just really passionate about the impact that good quality nutrition can have on people's lives, and more specifically the female health space. It's an area that both myself and Lisa have focused on for Lisa's like a long time in this space, almost 10 years, and I have
my age.
No, you're expert. Jeez. So we just really believe that knowledge is power, and you can do with that whatever you need to do for your personal circumstances. So today what we're going to cover is, what is PCOS? How do I differentiate it from other things? What do I need to look out for? Okay, if I think I might have it, how do I go about actually getting a diagnosis? Because that can be a process and a journey in itself. And then, okay, what do I ask my GP for? Like, what blood tests do I need to run to actually, clarify whether or not it is PCOS I'm actually working with, or is it something totally different? And then Lisa's going to take us through, okay, well, if we've established we have PCOS, what is it that we can actually do to support ourselves? And to soothe some of your concerns, there are so many things you can do, and so many things that are so impactful. Like, it's one of these conditions that is obviously super frustrating, and it's, can be annoying and frustrating from like a fertility perspective, and like irregular cycles and everything that goes with it. But thankfully, like when we compare it to other conditions like endometriosis, where it's very like complex, endometriosis has like, it's so multifaceted and it can be very hard for a lot of women to get relief. With PCOS, we can get relief, and I have had lots of clients, and I know Lisa's the exact same, who their PCOS is so well managed that it barely impacts their life. They have regular cycles and they really have it under control. So that's what we want to convey to you, that it isn't something that is going to wreak havoc on your, daily life forever. So what actually is PCOS? So polycystic ovarian syndrome is an endocrine and a metabolic condition. And so what that means is it affects the hormone center in the brain, and it also impacts your metabolic functions. So how you process food and how your body extracts energy from food, and it's all those metabolic processes that go with that. it affects 1 in 10 women, and that statistic is actually thought to be higher because a lot of women's PCOS actually goes undiagnosed. So it can take quite a while. I think at the moment, is it 5 years to get a PCOS diagnosis?
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that's too long because it's actually quite easy to diagnose. It really is. So it shouldn't really take that long at all. And it is the most common endocrine abnormality that affects women of reproductive age. So it's something that, you know, really shows itself in irregular ovulation and irregular cycles and irregular periods, but with it comes a lot of other kind of symptoms, and these symptoms are driven by having too much male androgens, so in essentially male dominant hormones such as testosterone, which then cause the symptoms of irregular cycles, acne, dark facial hair, which is also called hirsutism. Weight gain or difficulty losing weight is one of the symptoms that can really, I suppose, trigger the initial thoughts of like, oh, is there something wrong here? Because, you know, you might be eating very well and you might be, you know, exercising. You're like, okay, well, I'm really struggling to like manage my weight. Intense cravings, mood swings, and then infertility. That's another time in women's lives where PCOS really comes up, and like a diagnosis might occur because, say, for example, if you have been on the pill for your 20s and then into your 30s, you start, you know, maybe considering your fertility and considering trying to conceive, and you're finding yourself not ovulating or not regularly ovulating, and you're in this, you know, potentially process of trying to figure out what's up with your fertility. And that's another time where a PCOS diagnosis can come about. And I will chat a little bit more about the pill in the context of PCOS. And then the other symptom that is quite common is male pattern baldness. So kind of around this side, you know, on your scalp, where you would kind of more associated with male you know, hair loss. And then similarly, like, you know, you can get hair on your back and acne on your back and things like that. So they're all the symptoms that would be commonly associated with PCOS. So how do we actually go about diagnosing PCOS? And, you know, from an orthodox medicine perspective, when you go and see your GP, what are the things that they are actually looking at? So our general practitioners in Ireland and the UK and many other European countries go from a criteria called the Rotterdam criteria. The name comes from the place in which this group of medical professionals came together and decided the different characteristics or, you know, criteria that women presenting with need to have in order to be diagnosed with PCOS. So one of the main ones is irregular periods. So that comes from irregular ovulation, or the lack of periods. So typically with women who have PCOS, they'll have very long, elongated cycles. So, and, you know, very regular. So 1 month it might be 30 days, the next month it could be 50 days. And that's all down to the irregular ovulation that's happening. So that's one part of the criteria. The next is hyperandrogenism. So that's basically those male androgens and those male hormones like testosterone that I mentioned earlier being in excess of hyper, so elevated. And with this hyperandrogenism, you would typically see the signs of like acne and hirsutism and all the kind of physical signs that go with having elevated androgens, as well as them being evident on a blood test. And then the third part of the criteria is when you would get an ultrasound scan on your pelvic and it's a vaginal ultrasound, and you'd see multiple cysts on the ovaries. So that's called polycystic ovaries. But in saying that, you can have polycystic ovaries but not have PCOS. And it's actually very typical for a lot of women to have cysts on their ovaries. So if you've been diagnosed with PCOS and the only method of diagnosis that has been used is you have cysts on your ovaries and you don't have any other symptoms, then I would really query whether or not it's PCOS you're dealing with for your kind of symptoms. So it's just something to bear in mind. There are other criteria. So there are other organizations, so say, for example, a very well-regarded organization is the Androgen Excess and PCOS Society criteria. Bit of a mouthful in terms of a name for a society, but their diagnosis criteria does differ from the Rotterdam criteria, and there's a lot of, I suppose, controversy amongst professionals in the space and in the female health and hormonal space around the validity of the Rotterdam criteria. It is what our GPs are going off as it currently stands, but there has been a lot of call for it to be revised. And the main difference between these diagnosis criteria between the two different Rotterdam criteria and the PCOS Society criteria is that the PCOS Society says that in order to get a PCOS diagnosis, you need all three of the following. So that is ovarian dysfunction, so your irregular cycles, irregular ovulation, polycystic or polycystic ovaries on a ultrasound. So one of those things. Then you would also need to have high androgens on a blood test. And you also need to exclude all other conditions that will cause hyperandrogenism or the symptoms of PCOS. So one condition that is often misdiagnosed in the context of PCOS is hypothalamic amenorrhea. And hypothalamic amenorrhea is when you have not had a period for 3 months, or if you have irregular cycles, if you have not had a period for 6 months. And they're very different conditions. So hypothalamic amenorrhea is essentially a state of low energy availability. A lot of athletes or women who are over-exercising and under-fueling would find themselves where they've lost their menstrual cycle. And that's because the body is in a high stress scenario and it is preserving its energy, and it is not wanting to, it's want to preserve its energy for all of what the body sees as essential bodily functions, like breathing, like your heart, like your brain function. And it says, no, reproduction is not of concern right now because this is not a safe environment to bring a baby into. So we're not going to let you get pregnant. So we're going to turn off your reproductive hormones and preserve energy. And that's hypothalamic amenorrhea. Whereas PCOS is a different condition entirely it's endocrine and it's metabolic. So just one thing to be aware of, that they are different, but they can present themselves in missing periods or very irregular periods if you are kind of on maybe over exercising and not fueling your body correctly. If you're I see with clients all the time, excluding food groups, excluding fats, excluding carbohydrates. Those food groups are absolutely essential for female hormonal health. So that's all I'll kind of say on hypothalamic amenorrhea, and we may do another webinar specifically focused on that because I know it's something a lot of women are struggling with. But just wanted to call it out there. So I think the main thing from here to take is you really do need to have the signs of high androgens, both the symptoms in terms of maybe the facial hair, the acne, the irregular cycles, but also them, to see them on a blood test as well, to be really sure that it's PCOS we're dealing with. And then when we go to the GP, what bloods do we need to ask for? So there are particular ones. These are like a list, and you can feel free to take a photo of this slide if it's helpful for you when you are having a conversation with your general practitioner. But when we're looking at the results, the main things that we're focusing in on here is the ratio between LH, which is our luteinizing hormone, and FSH. And these are follicle stimulating hormone. And this ratio should be 2 to 1. But if it's greater than this for PCOS, your LH is typically really elevated. So that's a really big indicator that you're dealing with PCOS. Whereas the contrary is actually true when you're dealing with hypothalamic amenorrhea, where your FSH is elevated. So that's a really good indicator as to which you're dealing with. And then the other key ones are your androgens, so your testosterone, your free testosterone, and your DHEAS. They're going to give you a really good indication as to are those androgens elevated. Then the other things like SHBG is sex hormone binding globulin, and prolactin. So these are all giving us a really well-rounded picture of whether or not it's PCOS that we're looking at. And vitamin D is interesting. You will likely struggle getting that tested with your GP. It will need to be done privately through like an at-home kit. So there's great companies like Wild Atlantic and Care Screen who you can just order an at-home vitamin D test. It's a finger prick test and it'll give you a vitamin D reading. But where that becomes particularly important for women with PCOS is that it's typically low because of their body needs more vitamin D. So it's because the inflammation, and it's really perpetuated by low vitamin D levels as well. So we've seen in research that when you bring up those vitamin D levels, it can have a positive impact on your PCOS symptoms. So that's another thing just to bear in mind. And then after you've established that it is PCOS that you're dealing with and you're having that conversation with your GP, the first protocol from a GP's toolkit is usually to prescribe the oral contraceptive pill or some form of hormonal contraception. And that is to quote unquote regulate your cycle, to give you that regular bleed or the withdrawal bleed that you would get from the pill. However, it is really important to point out that while the pill is effective at supporting your PCOS symptoms in terms of like it can help reduce down some acne, it will, you know, regulate your cycle in terms of like you don't ovulate, so then you don't have a cycle, so you're kind of not getting those, you know, symptoms. It can help with the facial hair and other things like that, but what it's not doing is actually treating the root cause of what's going on with your PCOS symptoms. So that's just something to be really mindful of, and it's essentially a band-aid solution for a later point. So if you're, you know, saying, okay, well, I just want a fix for now, then the pill, you know, it might be something you consider. However, from our perspective and the way myself and Lisa work with the clients, we kind of say, okay, well, like, let's treat the root cause of this, and it's a condition that you will likely need to manage for your whole, you know, reproductive life. So it can be done very effectively. So that's the way we typically do it, through nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. And it gives you ultimately just a better health status because you're managing the condition. So while I can totally see where the pill and why the pill comes in from a you know, medical perspective, that is one of their main tools to treat or to support PCOS. It really isn't treating the root of the problem. So just be aware of that, and that the symptoms that you're experiencing will rebound when you come off the pill or whatever other form of hormonal contraception that is, the patch, the bar. And if it is a case that you're then coming off that contraception with the view to getting pregnant or to support your fertility, it may not be the best, you know, situation. So just to bear that in mind. And then the other thing worth mentioning from I suppose a treatment perspective that may come up in the context of your conversation with your GP is metformin. So metformin is a pharmaceutical drug that is used and is effective at supporting insulin sensitivity. And Lisa's going to go into this in a lot more detail, but essentially one of the main things with PCOS is that you have a compromised ability to actually utilize glucose. Your insulin isn't as sensitive. So metformin can help that. It is effective at supporting insulin sensitivity, and in turn, it does then support regular ovulation. I think metformin can be very effective. I've had lots of clients that have used it. They've also used it in conjunction with another supplement that we're going to talk about some more, called inositol, which has absolutely superb research on it for PCOS. It's as effective, if not more effective, than metformin, but it doesn't have any of the side effects that metformin has. A lot of women can tolerate metformin very well, but there are a cohort of women that really don't feel great. They feel nauseous on it, and they get other symptoms and side effects. So just worth bearing in mind, but I absolutely can see it as part of a toolkit if needed, if the other pieces of the puzzle aren't kind of working for you. So Lisa, I'm going to hand over to you now to go through the management strategies and what can we actually do to help our PCOS.
Perfect. Well, hello everybody. So now that you've got that really deep understanding of PCOS, kind of what the main drivers are, the symptoms, and what you're kind of dealing with when you're having conversations with GPs or consultants, now it's really about, I think, taking back control and like figuring out what is actually the things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. So looking at diet, we're going to break down the key nutrients, look at the best type of movement and the research around that, and then stress management. So first things first, Jenny had just spoke there about insulin sensitivity. And I suppose when that becomes really important on a day-to-day basis is how we balance our blood sugars. So what does that mean? When we eat carbohydrates, we are breaking them down into glucose and they begin to get broken or released into the bloodstream. Now, for the average person who maybe doesn't have PCOS or doesn't kind of have that insulin resistance, which is associated with PCOS, they tend to manage their blood sugars pretty well. But if you do have PCOS, you have a reduced ability to manage glucose. So looking at simple ways within your day and your meals and your snacks that you can actually manage it is going to be really, really supportive. So I'm going to give you just a typical example and of kind of maybe a day that you may have experienced before, and you might be able to relate to how you feel. So say an example of a client when we start working together, they may be rushing out the door with a slice of toast and a banana. What that's going to do is it's going to break down into glucose really, really quickly. And it's going to, if you just have a look here at where it says the spike, so you're going to get a massive spike in your blood sugars. And because there's no protein, because there's no fats in that meal, you have this massive crash. When that's happening every few hours of every day, of every week, of every month, that's when it becomes an issue, and even more so in PCOS. So to bring it back to how can you actually manage this, it's about adding in protein to each of your meals, and we're going to look at how to do that. I'm going to give you some kind of options and some different recipe ideas. We're also going to look at the types of carbohydrates. So I think carbohydrates get a really bad rap, and they're so vitally important. If you're a client of mine, you'll know how highly I talk about carbohydrates, but it really is about the quality of them and making sure that they have plenty of fiber. So carbohydrates that would be seen as high fiber, they haven't gone through a huge amount of processing. They are still in like their whole form. So you're thinking potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, oats, whereas the more simple carbohydrates, the ones that have been more kind of processed, they would be, let's say, our cakes, our pastries, our breads. And there's definitely a time and a place for them. But when it comes back to PCOS, managing our blood sugars, keeping ourselves feeling full, satiated throughout the day, we want to make sure that we're eating plenty of fiber. And then the other thing, and I think this became really fashionable for a while, was skipping breakfast, doing intermittent fasting. And I'll put my hand up. I was one of those. I was on that bandwagon where I was getting up, doing my exercise, having coffee, and then not eating till 11. And I was wondering, like, why has my period gone absolutely haywire? And it was only when I actually sat back and thought about it. It was doing nothing for my cortisol levels, but it was actually doing nothing promising for my blood sugars either. It was sending me into a spiral where by the evening time, I had such intense cravings. By the time I finished my dinner, all I was thinking about was what's the next snack. So don't skip breakfast. I was actually talking to Jenny about this earlier on, where I had heard on a podcast, somebody had said that breakfast is the most important day. And then they actually said, no, breakfast is the most powerful meal of the day. And I really stand by that. It is the meal that you can have the most positive impact on the rest of the day. So what does the nutrition protocol for PCOS look like? We're going to really simplify it down. It is balancing your blood sugars, as we spoke about, protein at each meal. So in a typical day, that could look like an egg-based breakfast. It could be a snack of maybe some Greek yogurt and berries with some flax seeds or chia seeds. a lunch with fish or chicken with a salad, and maybe something similar for dinner, maybe chicken, or if you're more plant-based, you could add in some beans and lentils. But it's about finding small ways to kind of make that simple, but trying to stagger protein throughout the day. We talked about the high fiber carbohydrates. So it's absolutely not about cutting out carbohydrates. And that's something that you might see a lot online when it comes to PCOS is low carb, keto, those type of diets. They help women lose weight in a very short period of time, but it is not sustainable. It has such a negative impact on thyroid hormones, on all of the other hormones that Jenny had mentioned. So it is not going to get to the root cause. It's a very quick fix, but long term, we need carbohydrates. The other thing is, and I suppose this is something that it kind of, I know I spoke about intermittent fasting, and that's not what it is. It really is about still eating within a window. And we've probably all been told, don't eat before bed, it'll affect your sleep. And that's really kind of what the research shows now. Ideally, we want to give our digestive system about 2 hours break from having your dinner to then going to bed. So let's just say that your eating window is either between 8 o'clock in the morning and 8 p.m. Or if you wanted to bring it back even more, to you have your breakfast at 8 and then you finish at 6, and obviously keep well hydrated. But there's a huge amount of research, and especially in PCOS, that giving your digestive system that bit of a longer break before bed can be really beneficial. But most importantly, to supporting those glucose levels, and then the positive impact that has on the ovaries as well. Eating healthy fats. We absolutely love fats. We need them. Our hormones are made out of healthy fats, and we want to supply our body with a steady stream of, we like to call them the Mediterranean. So olive oil, avocados, nut seeds, oily fish like salmon and avocado. They are going to nourish your hormones, but also nourish the ovaries and nourish the eggs as well, which is also a really important part of a healthy reproductive cycle. And then last but not least, do not leave yourself hungry. It's really important when we bring it back to what helps women support their PCOS. It is about balancing blood sugars. If you are eating meals and leaving really long gaps in between, allowing yourself to go hungry, that's not doing anything beneficial for you. So having snacks on hand that are a really nice balance of fats and protein, or fats and fiber. So I really like carrot sticks or pepper sticks with hummus. That's a really good snack. Or you could have like a piece of fruit with almonds or peanut butter for those healthy fats. Even something as simple as like turkey with hummus rolled up can be something that, if you're kind of in a bit of a pinch of time, just knowing that you're getting a bit of protein, it can be really, really helpful there. So what 3 things can you actually start tomorrow? So the number one, and that is not a breakfast. It could be a breakfast image there. That would be very impressive if people start their day that way. But breakfast. So if you're somebody who is currently skipping breakfast, or you are you're kind of having something quick, like I had mentioned, like either the banana on the go, or you are having just a slice of toast and leaving the house, or kind of either skipping it all completely, now is the time to find a breakfast that works for you. Overnight oats can be great, and making sure you're adding a protein source like Greek yogurt, or if you do have time to make something like a frittata, an omelette, they're really like kind of the best start to the day. With a frittata or an omelette, you're getting the protein and the healthy fats from the eggs, but also by adding in some vegetables, you're getting a fiber content there. So it's going to keep you feeling fuller for longer again. The next one is shortening your window. So if you are somebody who is currently having their dinner, maybe having a snack at 8, and then maybe having something again at 10 p.m. just before you go to bed, try to bring that window back a little bit. And it doesn't have to be that you jump from 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. just slowly, maybe every day or two, you just bring it back an hour and just check in with yourself, see how you feel the next morning. You might actually feel like you have a greater appetite for your breakfast. And I think that's really key, because if you do tend to snack late into the evening, you might notice that your appetite is basically zero in the morning. So we want to kind of give the digestive system that opportunity to kind of feel hungry in the morning. And then fats and fiber, adding chia seeds, especially flax seeds and pumpkin seeds. These have really powerful properties when it comes to supporting digestive health, but actually female hormonal health. And simple ways to add them in would be into a smoothie, having them in your overnight oats. If you're having a salad, toasting up some pumpkin seeds, sprinkling on top is a really nice addition. So I just think there are three simple things that if you were to say, I'm going to start them tomorrow, you would actually start to notice within 2 to 3 days a really positive shift. So one of our favorite topics, supplements and nutrients. So we have, both myself and Jenny have been working with clients with PCOS for many, many moons. So we really have a lot of insight into what nutrients do work and kind of the doses and the types. So we're going to talk you through the 6 most researched nutrients and the doses of them, and as well, if you have any questions on these later on, be sure to let me know. Inositol is the most researched nutrient when it comes to PCOS. It has been shown to help regulate ovulation, and it does that by supporting the energy mechanisms within the ovaries. So impaired glucose metabolism and that insulin response that we touched on, it basically just reduces the ovaries' ability to function. So by adding in inositol, it helps to improve that. It also has been shown to improve sleep and mood and anxiety. And if you're somebody with PCOS or any hormonal imbalance, that's something that we all want to improve on. So what the research shows is a daily dose of 4 grams, and that is ideally split up into 2 daily doses. So if you are taking Gigi, that's going to give you your initial 2 grams, and then later on in the evening time, or you could switch it up, you can have an additional 2 grams. The next one is zinc. So zinc has very powerful anti-androgenic properties. So what that means is it helps to lower elevated testosterone levels, which is the main driver of PCOS. And usually we recommend anywhere between 15 to 30 milligrams of that. It is a nutrient that I wouldn't take long or high dose for a long period of time. And say with the likes of Gigi, we have 15 milligrams, which is a really nice kind of steady daily dose that has been shown to support ovulation as well as hormonal acne and painful periods as well. Magnesium, the absolute like holy grail of supplements. What can it not do? But when it comes to PCOS, shown to reduce period pain, anxiety in women, and improve sleep quality. The other thing, and paired with the inositol, is so great for reducing cravings. And that all comes back to its ability to support blood sugar balance. Folate as well as vitamin D, they're 2 nutrients that are chronically depleted in women with PCOS. A lot of this has to do with the inflammatory state if the PCOS is like very active at the time. So they're 2 nutrients that we want to keep our eye on. So with vitamin D, Jenny had touched on, not something that GPs will do, but with folate, you'll absolutely be able to get that tested. And then B6, another hero nutrient when it comes to PCOS, supporting overall hormonal balance between progesterone and estrogen levels, and also serotonin production, which is that kind of happy hormone and kind of keeps us balanced and feeling really well. So lifestyle habits. You've probably all heard these before. Get better sleep, try not to stress too much. But how do we actually implement those things? So Magnesium before bed and inositol are absolutely fantastic for supporting sleep quality, and I highly recommend taking them before bed if you are struggling with either falling asleep or staying asleep. The other thing is finding simple ways to unwind, and yes, that can be a level of activity like going for a walk or like doing Pilates or a yoga class or something like that. But it can just even be allowing yourself an extra 10 minutes to take off your makeup and do a really nice skincare routine, or giving yourself a little bit more time in bed to read your book. Small little things like that actually start to send really positive signals to our body that we're safe and there's no need to make cortisol or adrenaline, two hormones that can be kind of massive drivers in PCOS. The other one is daylight exposure. So this has been shown to have really positive impact on our overall hormonal balance. And what it means is getting out in daylight first thing in the morning, making sure that you're getting direct sunlight into your eyes for just a couple of minutes, and then the same again in the evening. If you're somebody that works on or uses screens a lot, this can kind of confuse our eyes, and it has quite a negative impact on our stress response as well as our sleep. So it's a really simple kind of easily achieved thing to add into your daily routine. And when it comes to exercise, strength training is kind of the thing that is really promoted for PCOS, and it is because it helps with insulin sensitivity. So you can be eating the best quality carbohydrates, making sure that you've got protein at every meal, doing all the right things, but if your muscles are not sensitive to insulin, it's just going to kind of prolong the kind of the whole protocol, and it can actually just speed up your PCOS journey and get you to a place of management much faster. The other thing is the more lean muscle mass you build through strength training or resistance training, it can support fat loss, which is something that women with PCOS can really struggle with, or it can just be a lot slower to achieve. And last but not least, improves cycle regularity. Alongside the likes of strength training, resistance training, and I suppose Pilates comes into that strength and resistance aspect. The other side of things is walking and yoga and Pilates. They're a lot lower impact, so they don't require the body to make a lot of those stress hormones, which are great in small amounts, but if you're already in a stress state, it might not be the most ideal thing. So it really is about finding a balance and listening to yourself and not trying to push through just because your gym kind of schedule says that there's a class every second day or every day. You listen to yourself and kind of get into a nice routine with strength training and then that lower impact. So the key takeaways, this is what we really hope that you've kind of left with today, is a much deeper understanding of PCOS, how it impacts the body, what to discuss with the GP, and also the blood test to get done anywhere between 6 to 12 months. Also, the role that nutrition plays, so it is such a key player when it comes to PCOS, and I suppose it really kind of gives you back that control for a situation that might feel very much so outside of your control. The non-negotiable nutrients that we spoke about, and how to balance exercise and stress when it comes to PCOS.
Yeah, I think just on the blood tests, one thing I probably should have mentioned as well. So that list of bloods that was just here, they need to be checked on day 3 or 4 of your cycle. So they're called like the day 3 hormone panel. So that's when you're going to get an actual reading, and that's when you're not on hormonal contraception like the pill, because you wouldn't be cycling your own natural hormones at this time. So just something to bear in mind. They do need to be checked at a particular time, so to get a good understanding of them. But I will just stop the recording now ahead of any questions that you might have, and we are very happy to answer them.
Yeah, so feel free if you either want to come off mic or if you want to just drop them into the chat box there, whichever works.
But if you don't have any questions, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you do want to watch back anything at any point, like I said, we do store all of our webinars on our YouTube channel, so you can find them all there. And equally, we are always at the end of a DM on Instagram or an email if you do have any questions and you'd like to chat through. We're very, very happy to help. So thank you so much for joining us.
I just had a quick question, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah, fire ahead, Sarah.
I actually have two, if it's okay. One of them is I have the bar in, and I still have quite strong symptoms from PCOS. When I get the bar out, is it just going to get worse, or?
So are you at a stage that you would like to kind of get the bar out?
Yeah, so I'm happily had 2 kids. No, we did have to get help, but we have our 2 kids, and I got the bar in then after my second. But to be honest, I would really like to get my body back to myself and just try and balance all of this out. So I'm hoping to get it out just to get everything to try and manage everything myself, you know, at home kind of thing.
Yeah. What I would say is during the phase before getting it out, it's really vital to start building up those nutrients beforehand, because it will support you then when you do get the bar out. So having the magnesium, the zinc, the B6, the vitamin D already in your system will just make that kind of transition a lot easier for you.
Amazing.
I'd also maybe have a look at your digestive system. So definitely have regular fiber intake, plenty of water. If you are kind of experiencing like irregular stools, maybe a probiotic. But I think the key is trying to build up those nutrients, giving yourself maybe, it could be up to like, what would you say, Jenny, like 6 to 8 weeks to build up the nutrients before coming off contraception, just to give your body that bit of a time.
Yeah, I'd probably say a little bit longer. Ideally,
Yeah.
I'd say kind of like 8 to 12. But yeah, absolutely. If you're getting 8 weeks, you're giving yourself a really good start on that.
Perfect, thank you. And if you don't mind, I have one more as well. It was just about the breakfast. Now, the things you were saying are copy of what my life is, and I'm never hungry for breakfast, but I've been trying to eat breakfast because I've heard so many good things about it. But I'm up at 6 with the kids, and I usually have breakfast dinner around 9:30 after the school drop. Is that too late? It's just the 12-hour window thing. I was trying to manage both, if that makes sense.
And what are you having then between waking up and 9:30 in the morning?
I try and drink as much as about half a litre of water and maybe a cup of tea.
A cup of tea, okay. And you're not having any hunger kind of
No, none at all. No.
Okay. In an ideal world, we would be eating kind of 60 to 90 minutes between waking up and, yeah, it'd be kind of 60 to 90 minutes. If you were to have something small, like maybe some oatcakes with some nut butter, or a small portion of yogurt with berries, just something that your body stops producing cortisol. So cortisol is a hormone that gets us up, gets us going in the morning, and we actually really need it in that kind of high dose. But what we want to do is then it to kind of naturally drop off to the point that by the evening time, it's non-existent in our system. But if we go through a fasted state, so you have fasted all night, and then there's an additional like 3.5 hours where you can kind of up and go, and I'm sure it's really busy getting like the kids out the door, that is an extra stressor on the body. So it doesn't have to be that you're having this kind of big breakfast. It could just be something small, and then maybe at the 9:30 mark where you have a bit more time, then introduce your breakfast.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
But I would recommend having it that it's not just the carbohydrate, that there is a bit of protein or a bit of healthy fats there as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Sorry, I've just been typing away on all the questions in the question box.
Okay. Is there any good ones to?
I think
no,
I think we're mostly around like cycle regularity and what the best supplements are, and I like will only do a plug to Gigi if it is the absolute right fit. But in the case of West, Gigi is absolutely the right fit. And I hate saying that because we are sold out. So that's so annoying. I know that. But it literally has your inositol, it has your magnesium, it has your zinc, has like all of the things that you need. So the only thing that I will say is if you are looking for like an ideal supplement protocol for PCOS, what I would recommend, just like obviously without speaking to everyone individually, but what I would recommend is the hormone blend and PMS and hormone balance blend every single day, an omega-3 supplement and some extra inositol to bring you up to that 4 grams every single day. You're getting 2 grams in your dose of Gigi, and then say after your dinner or whatever way, opposite end of the day. I actually end up always having my Gigi at the end of the day because I love the impact that it has on my sleep. So after a meal as well is key. So yeah, topping up that inositol to make sure you're getting the 4 grams every single day is like, it's the best researched nutrient. So the thing is to really stay consistent with your supplements for PCOS. It's one of the few conditions that you will likely have to be on supplements forever. Like it's a metabolic condition that you need to manage, and supplements are particularly effective and highly researched. So there are other conditions that are like, oh, we don't really have a lot of information about it, we don't know if it works, but we absolutely know that it works. And Lisa and I, even from a clinical perspective, have seen, like, we've women being like, I was just about to start IVF and I've got a regular cycle and I'm ovulating, and like they're like, this is magic. So stick with it.
100%.
And fair play to you for losing all that weight. That is, I'm sure, no easy feat, Karen, but hopefully hopefully the changing up your supplements a little bit will really help that, and try and like identify what the root kind of causes are of any sort of inflammation. But you're so welcome. I'm glad that you got hopefully lots of value from that, and like I said, myself and Lisa are very happy to help over messages or anything like that. So thank you so much for joining us. Yes, we have an idea. We will be getting to stock. Probably, was it 3 weeks, Lisa?
3 weeks,
Broken our heart. It's broken our heart that we're out of stock. But listen, say la vie. We'll come back with a bag, and we'll also be bringing back in the tumblers for like the 500 messages we get a week on the tumblers. But yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and we'll be sending around the recording in the next few days.
Yeah, we will.
Thanks
so much.
Bye.